first thing you're going to need to do is go to a large open space, such as a football field or a park. Make sure you have as much room to the sides as you do to the front, because when you're learning to throw the Raptor football, many throws may go off to one side or the other. So be sure to be free of people and obstacles. When you're learning to throw the Raptor football, choose a calm day to practice, because as the football flies through the air, you want to make sure that its behavior is due to your throwing style and not the wind. Before throwing the Raptor football, make sure all the parts are securely attached. Make sure the wing and the tails are securely attached and they're free from wobble. Throwing the Raptor football is similar to the game of golf. Now, when you're learning how to swing the golf club, you do not go out there on your first try and try to hit the ball as hard as you can, because you're going to miss. The same applies to the Raptor football. Learn the technique of throwing the Raptor football before you try to put a lot of power into your throws. We suggest you use about 50% power while learning to throw the Raptor football. Now, when learning to throw the Raptor football, it's always best to learn with a buddy. Have your friend stand about 20 yards from you, and both of you can learn at the same time. Let's learn the proper way of holding a Raptor football when throwing. You're going to take your throwing hand, which is my right hand, take your first finger and your middle finger. You're going to place them on the flat portion of the spinner piece. So, on the spinner, you have these extensions that stick out. Align these extensions to the top so the laces align. Now, take your two fingers and place them on the back flat surface. The rest of your fingers will hold the foam. This is what it looks like when you're properly holding the Raptor football. Now, when you first throw the Raptor football, your natural inclination is going to be to throw the Raptor football high into the air. This doesn't actually work that well, as it'll carry a normal flight trajectory. What you really want to do is you want to throw the Raptor football straight at your target, because you want to initialize the glide path as soon as possible. As you get better, you're actually going to start to throw a little bit downwards and let the Raptor football catch lift and glide upwards. When one throws a traditional football, they're used to spinning the body and spinning the ball in the air. You don't want to do that for the Raptor football. When you throw the Raptor football, you want to come backwards straight and you want to release straight, because you're trying to initialize the glide path as soon as possible. Now, it helps to have your friend watch you. Your friend can see when you pull backwards if the football is straight or if it's turned to one side or turned to the other side. Have him correct you to get the football to be straight and then to come out straight. As you learn to throw the Raptor football, you're going to notice that most of your power comes from flicking your wrist as you throw it. It's akin to throwing a baseball, where you have your two fingers on the baseball, and as you throw, you're flicking your wrist downwards. The same thing applies to the Raptor football. As you're throwing the Raptor football and you're carrying through your throw, you're going to flick your wrist at the very end to push it forward. Now, a tip. The CG of the product is actually right about here, but your fingers are pushing down here. Now you're going to notice that sometimes when you throw it and you flick your wrists, the Raptor football is going to flare upwards and then carry forward. The problem is, during this flaring, a lot of the energy is lost. So the tip is, when you're throwing the Raptor football, you're actually going to carry downwards more than you normally would. Then when you flick your wrists, it straightens the product out. This technique of carrying a little bit more downwards than flicking your wrists ends up in the best throws. So get the feel for it and practice it until you have it perfected. Once you do have it perfected, you have the feel for it, now you can start adding in more power. So start at around 50% power, learn the technique of flicking your wrists. The Raptor football flies very far on gentle throws, so it should be easy to learn how to throw the Raptor football without using a lot of power. Then when you have the power, you're going to get amazing results. When you're throwing the Raptor football, you're going to need to be adjusting the thumb screw provided on the horizontal tail. Now, for slow throws, you're going to need more downward force built into this tail. For fast throws, you're going to dial out the downward component. So, on slow throws, you're going to turn this clockwise so you can see a little bit of a curve on the horizontal tail going upward. What this does is it provides downforce on the tail. Because you're going to notice that when you throw the Raptor football, as it comes out of your hands, if the Raptor football comes out straight and then dives into the ground, you're going to need more downward force on this tail. So instead of it diving, this pushes down and levels it back out. Now, the opposite can happen, where when you throw the Raptor football, if you see it carry up too high and then come diving down and crash, you have too much downward force into the tail. So dial it back and go counterclockwise. So generally on slow throws, you need more downward force. On fast throws, you need less downward force. So when you throw the Raptor football at whatever distance you're at, see how it behaves in the air and then adjust the horizontal tail accordingly. Let's assume it's a calm day and you perfected your throwing technique. And when you throw the Raptor football, it's still turning to one side or the other. The next thing then to check for is the straightness of all the parts. Look down the back of the Raptor football and make sure the vertical tail is straight. Make sure the horizontal tail is straight. And if something's out of whack, you can literally take your hand and just bend the part back into shape. Don't bend till you snap it, but just slowly work the part over and over, check its straightness, and then work it over again. You can actually slowly bend the parts to massage back into the proper shape. The same thing applies to the main wings. When you look down the back of the Raptor football, you can actually see if one wing is twisted more than the other wing. For instance, let me exaggerate here. If the wings were twisted like this, it's not going to fly straight. So if you see something like this, you can slowly take the parts and just work it over and over until it's straight. So if you're having some problems, check the straightness of all your parts and work them back into the proper shape. When you're done throwing the Raptor football, always use the wall stand to store the product because it keeps the wing and tails free from damage during storage. One last tip. When you want to leave the Raptor football out in the field for a while, throw it on its back. That way it prevents the tail pieces from being damaged while it sits there.
Don't be caught playing with your old football. Upgrade to the Raptor football, the world's first flying football.